Understanding and Preventing Vicarious Trauma is a toolkit designed for instructors of English language learners, mostly those working in the settlement sector, usually link instructors, and it helps them understand vicarious trauma and other empathy-based stresses like burnout, compassion fatigue, and then it also provides them with information for how to prevent those things and to take care of their students. The impetus for this project was really, it was really coming out of real life experiences that instructors here at Bow Valley College were having. They were experiencing some difficulties working with learners that had trauma experiences and were maybe disclosing stories about traumatic events in their life. And it was something that was really on our radar. And we'd been thinking about it and looking for a venue to explore it a little bit more and to develop resources, because when we went to look for resources, there wasn't a lot out there. Really what was out there was, there was a bit on trauma-informed practice, but it focused mostly on K-12. It didn't really have that settlement sector focus or on adult learning focus. You know, it was really for other audiences. It was often for social workers or psychologists. And you know, though their context is really different. They might see a client, you know, once a week or once every 2 weeks for an hour, but in a full-time link class, an instructor might be with their students for 25 hours in a week. And so it was a really different context and different types of stories that people were hearing and different types of things that they were experiencing. And so I think that what makes this interesting and unique as a project is that it really responds to that gap. The intended outcomes of the program are, well, there are a few. One of them is that it is just meant to build capacity within the sector. That's our biggest goal. We want to ensure that there's a greater awareness of some of these issues so that they can be prevented and they can be mitigated, that instructors are empowered to teach trauma-informed classes, to respond to their students appropriately, and to ensure their learners are connected with resources that are appropriate for their needs. And then to promote their own and protect their own mental well-being. Well, it is an online self-directed toolkit. It was designed that way to make it accessible to anyone, really, for instructors working in rural areas, maybe even less formal instructors. Like sometimes there's ESL instructors in church groups and things like that. And so just something that they would also be able to access. It's also pretty concise. It takes about 8 to 10 hours to complete, and we did that because we know that people don't have a lot of time. Instructors are working at capacity and often beyond. They're often spending a lot of time outside their scheduled working hours with lesson preparation, marking, connecting with students, and so we knew that time was going to be an issue, and so we really focused on keeping it to what was most beneficial and what was most necessary. And there are 5 modules. The first module is really about introducing the participant to the topic. We discuss things like what vicarious trauma is, some examples. We talk about some things that you might see, some reasons that it can occur, and we also talk about other empathy-based stresses such as professional burnout or compassion fatigue, and then also some of the positive things like vicarious trauma, traumatic growth response. The second module introduces the idea of trauma-informed practice. It introduces it rather broadly, and it talks about the main principles in trauma-informed practice and gives some examples of why these are important principles and generally how they can be applied. The third module really focuses on the classroom, especially the English language classroom, and how to apply those trauma-informed principles in the classroom, and also some things that might come up in the classroom and kind of what to avoid and what to do. We talk a lot about triggers, things that might trigger a person's trauma, predictable triggers that we know are associated with things that might lead to a disclosure or someone oversharing something. But then also what to do in the case of unpredictable triggers, where somebody has an outburst or they share a story that the rest of the class or the instructor wasn't prepared for, and how to handle that and how to prevent those. And then the fourth module shifts more into the instructors and how they can promote their own well-being. So there are a lot of strategies that they can apply in their personal life, but also in their professional practice, so that they can handle things when they come up, identify things when they might come up so that they can hopefully avoid bigger problems, And then the last module is about advocacy and connecting to resources. In that last module, we profile Bow Valley College's suite of resources and wraparound supports. And then we also share about our partner organization, CEWA, and the way that they have their program set up and the supports that they have. And they're quite different. So we profiled the two organizations as exemplars of different possibilities, sort of a spectrum of the different types of services that might be offered. And then we created templates that people could use for their own area and their own region, the kind of thing you would want in a little handbook. And we realized that having a booklet and a template to fill out to put in those resources that an organization can have on hand and just update every couple years would be really beneficial so that individual instructors aren't doing that legwork on their own. What makes this toolkit effective is who it was designed by, I think. It was really important that we did the research with so many instructors across the country, and we really heard their stories. We did 53 interviews, I think, so most of those were with English language instructors, but then we also interviewed a few program coordinators, as well as a few experts in the field of trauma. So I feel like we had a really comprehensive set of data about what people are experiencing in the classroom as language instructors. And then we took those findings and, we analyzed them and then brought those findings to co-creation. Co-creation teams were made up of learners and instructors, and so it really ensured that whatever was going into the toolkit would be effective, would be related to their work and meet their needs. Another reason that it is effective is that we extensively piloted it. We piloted it locally in Calgary and the surrounding area. We made some changes. We introduced the workbook, for example, and then we also piloted it nationally all the way across the country with close to 100 more pilot participants. And so then that way, and we gathered a lot of feedback from that, and that really helped to make sure that the tool was effective, not just for what we imagined within our context, but for instructors all the way across the country. This was a promising practice as well because of partnerships. We had partners all the way through the project that were right there from the very beginning, right and through until the end. One of our partners, Dr. Patricia Kastouris, who's a professor at Mount Royal University here in Calgary, her background is trauma. That's her academic expertise, and she brought that along with a couple of research assistants from her university, and they really helped a lot on this project to make sure that it was evidence-based as well. A lot of the toolkit came from what we learned in the interviews and in co-creation, but she also vetted the content that it was accurate and that it aligned with current research and that knowledge base that was already out there. So that was a really important piece for making sure that it's effective.
For this project, we decided to build the evaluation framework on a Center for Disease Control out of the United States framework for understanding the impact and the implementation of professional development. And it's an important framework for that because it really helps to identify multiple levels of change that will occur as a result of professional development. And we highlighted 4 particular areas or 4 particular levels of change. So for the first one, we really interested in understanding reaction. So what was the level of satisfaction? Did people think that the information was relevant to their work? Was it easy to use? Was the technology user-friendly? We also were interested in awareness and understanding. So as a result of partaking in the toolkit, did they have new information? Another level we were really interested in is learning. So as a result of that information, did they learn new ways of doing their practice? Did they learn about their own boundaries as language instructors? So really using that information that they gathered as a result of the pilot and made sense of it in terms of their own practice, that learning piece. And then the final level that we were really interested in is understanding the behavior. So did they have intended behavior changes that they were hoping to apply at some point in the future? And then also because of the privilege really of being able to go back to piloters several months after, we asked them about actual change. Did you make change as a result of that information in your classroom, in your teaching or whatever? So cohort 1 learners gave us information through their pre-post survey as well as their focus groups that the content in the toolkit was valuable. They understood the information to be important for their classroom environment. They understood the classroom environment as being key for learner experience and also a place where possible trauma can come up and percolate and sort of bubble over to other learners as well as themselves. One of the key findings too that we found was really important is the instructors talked a lot in the focus groups about understanding their boundaries more. We heard instructors say, I often felt like I had to be many things to people, not only their instructor, but helping them with settlement, helping them find a place to live, helping them understand the Canadian context and environment. And through the toolkit, they told us it was important for us to understand that we have a role in these learners' lives, and our role isn't to be everything, but to be able to help support them in their settlement navigation by referral, offering resources or whatever. In terms of the pre-post test scoring, all of the indicators ranked above 85% in terms of change, often within the 90th percentile. That's pretty significant to be able to say 85+% people were able to experience positive impact as a result of their participation. The focus groups also told us that people were able to understand and identify planned change. I will be instructing certain activities differently, as opposed to maybe speaking about personal experience all the time. It might be about looking at the news, and if it's about looking at the news, ensuring that I understand everybody in my classroom so that I, for example, don't bring an article into the classroom that might trigger somebody's trauma experience. One of the really important outcomes is that the toolkit was able to provide people with information and tools and reflection and activities to understand their individual level change. But it really also surfaced some of the context that they actually work in. That was really important finding for us, is to say when you're delivering professional development programs, especially when it's embedded in multiple jurisdictional challenges, the whole onus doesn't sit on the instructor. That there needs to be changes that occur, at least in awareness. You begin with awareness and then planned changes as it relates to the environment that they're practicing or that they're working in.
We are looking at the possibility of adapting it to other groups. We really think that it shouldn't all be on the instructors. It should be sector-wide, and it should be at all sorts of levels throughout an organization. So it's important for not just instructors, but also their supervisors, program coordinators, and also those making decisions, making policy decisions, or else just organizational decisions in scheduling, administrative loads, things like that, that are trauma-informed and based on this research.
The program has broad applicability within the settlement sector. So anybody who's client-facing and who is a beneficiary of a settlement journey or story, I think would benefit from it. Currently, it has been designed for English language learning instructors, and so it does require a high level of English to access the materials. And because it was designed with instructors in mind, it also has some, pedagogical underpinnings that I think might be challenging if we were just to take it and port it to another group or to, for example, settlement workers. I think what it would need is a bit of revision and adaptation, but the content itself can definitely be ported to other groups to access the materials.
So one thing that we did learn is, although it's very accessible and it's self-directed, not everyone wants to take a self-directed course. Not everyone's motivated to sit in front of a computer and click through and do these online activities. We also recognize that in some cases, people really benefit from having a cohort of other people taking it at the same time that they can debrief with, that they can discuss what they're learning with, and also to have a facilitator that they can get feedback from and just chat with.
We know the topic is vicarious trauma. We know that going through the materials could bring up, you know, heavier thoughts for people, and so it would benefit from a community of practice. And so while it is self-directed, I think it also could benefit from a group that works through the content together, and definitely with a skilled facilitator running the course. I think with all projects, time is extremely important, and so this was a 3-year project. It allowed us the time to conduct the interviews that we needed to conduct, to distill that information, to move to the next step of co-creation, and then to involve our co-creation partners, both here in Calgary and elsewhere, in a process that was developing and evolving over time. And so I think it is important that projects like this are not done too quickly, that you have the time to pilot and test, and to ensure that everyone that's involved has a say and is satisfied with the outputs along the way, not just at the very end, but along the way. Partnerships would be one of the things that I think are extremely important. And so it was important for us at the beginning to ensure that we had a national scope, that we were not just assuming that something that we created in Calgary, Alberta would be something that would be applicable across the country. So having partners across the country was very important, and having those partnerships in place before we started was also very important. Another piece that is important is funding. The funding also allows you to release people from their the work that they normally do, to be able to focus and concentrate on a project as in-depth as this. And so we were afforded that luxury with this project, and we were able to give release time to instructors to participate. We were able to compensate our partners across Canada to participate as well. So I think that that is also a very important piece.
I think English language instructors are in a really amazing job. You know, they're often the first real relationship with a Canadian that a newcomer might develop. It's a relationship of trust. Learners often see their instructors as a cultural informant, someone that can help them navigate and understand life in Canada, and someone that can give them advice. But with that privilege and power, there's also some issues that can arise. Sometimes instructors take on more than they can handle. They might be exposed to a lot of stories that they're not ready to process themselves. And so I think that this toolkit responds to that. It really is to empower instructors to draw on their strengths, to use their expertise to meet their learners' needs in the classroom, while ensuring that their other needs outside of that are also met, while they're still developing a community, building a group and a network around themselves so that they can succeed in Canada.